Hey guys, I don't really have this one very well planned out. I have an idea of what I want to say, but I'm not sure how easily I'm going to be able to articulate it. But there's a saying that a man with two watches never knows what time it is, and I think that applies very much to karate or any martial art in actual fact. You know, one of the challenges that I have had in my martial journey is that I've never been 100% satisfied with the quality of my technique or with the quality of the tactics that I'm learning, much less the tactics that I am actually capable of performing. I know that there are better ways of punching, better ways of kicking, better ways of defending, and that's not a criticism of my karate style, far from it. Every style operates on certain premises, certain beliefs about what the priorities should be for that style. Now my style operates on the reasonable belief that strong basics are more likely to do you good in a fight than clever, complicated bunkai and really tricky jiu-jitsu and throws and locks and stuff like that. You know, and I think it also operates on the premise that techniques that take decades to master are no good for you. You know, the average student doesn't do martial arts for decades, so it's unreasonable to be teaching them stuff that they'll never master in the time that they do martial arts. And I think that that's a reasonable premise. And you know, you look at other martial arts, say jiu-jitsu operates on the premise that you should be able to throw and lock and do ground fighting and all of that. Taekwondo or Hapkido operate on the premise that it's better to kick than it is to punch, for example. You know, some styles work on the premise that it's better to fight close. Some work on the premise it's better to fight at a distance, and each has value. You could argue for each of those. And then there are styles which operate on the premise that you'll be doing those styles for the rest of your life. And wonderful though that premise is, it's not matched by reality, to be honest. No, the average student of all styles quits before they reach green belt level, which is less than 2 years. So to assume that your students will be your students for decades is a fantasy. Even famous teachers like Yip Man, Bruce Lee's instructor, had a massive trouble retaining students. And you know, you'd think, wow, he's the most amazing fighter, and yet he still couldn't keep his students. So the fact is that we need to be prosaic about our styles. Now, one of the things that frustrates me often is that, as I say, I know that there are better ways of doing things, but I've come to realise over the past year that it's not whether there's a better way, but whether the way that we do is sufficient. So, for example, I may be able to, in response to a head level punch, block in such a way that breaks their arm and then shatter every bone in their jaw with a single punch. That may be something that I could learn. I may be able to move out the way like some kind of ninja, do a somersault with some clever leg lock and then drop the person to the floor. But is that a necessary response? You know, for example, we're always taught the pursuit of power, that you know that we should seek, and I think that this premise does us a great injustice, actually. But we're always taught to teach to pursue the maximum power possible. You know, the maximum efficiency, the maximum use of hips, the maximum strength in your punch or whatever. And in actual fact, I think that's ridiculous. You know, because you don't need the maximum amount of power. I could probably punch with 10% of my power and knock somebody out cold. But seeking the maximum amount of power might make my technique slower. It might just be unnecessary. The things that I might need to do technically may be unnecessary, and so I'm teaching myself. It's about, for example, you know, I could teach myself how to drive blindfolded, but whilst I could spend a decade learning to do that, it's not necessary. To get around the roads, all I need to be able to do is open my eyes and drive. So the thing that I've come to recognise is that even though there is an optimal way to do things and there's a better way to do many things, that those optimal or better ways are not necessary. They may be desirable, and for many of us we may seek the optimal. I certainly think that the Japanese concept of kaizen, of constant never-ending improvement, applies here, that we each seek to optimize our techniques within the bounds of what we can do, and not of what we can do, but within the bounds of the constraints of the technique, I guess I would say. And it's I can do a straight punch in the style that my style does a straight punch, or I can look and say, well, actually Kung Fu does a straight punch this way, why don't we learn a Kung Fu type punch? Or I could say, well, actually Bruce Lee did a punch in this way, why don't we learn a punch in this way? And the answer is because that's not my style. And when you start mishmashing styles together, what happens is that you end up with a recipe for dissatisfaction. So if you were an artisan, for example, say a craftsman, I could give you, supposing you're a woodworker, I could give you five chisels and a saw, and you know, and a hammer and some nails, and you could build a wonderful work of art. You could spend your time learning to use those relatively few tools. Or I could throw at you a toolkit of 1,000 different tools, and you could become a jack of all trades and never master any of those tools as much as you would the small tool set that I gave you the first place. And so consequently what happens is that you never achieve mastery. You're never capable of producing anything beautiful, because even though you have thousands of tools which are all capable of very precisely accomplishing some part of the wood shaping craft, because you never achieve mastery of any of them, you never actually produce anything. And likewise with karate, you can look at all of the very precise tools used across the entire martial arts spectrum and ask, why don't we use those tools? And then try to teach yourself to use them and never achieve mastery in any of them. Or you can take the tool set provided by your style and apply them wholeheartedly, apply your training wholeheartedly to mastery of that set of tools, and you'll probably have something very functional. I'm reminded here of the full contact fighter, I believe it was full contact, Bill Superfoot Wallace. Now Bill Superfoot Wallace, I think, was paralysed on one side of his body, or was unable to use one side of his body, so he only kicked left-footed, and yet he still went on to win multiple karate world championships. And it just reminds me of the idea that if you learn to have one tool, if you master one tool, if you can just punch devastatingly well with a single reverse punch, or a single, you know, a very committed reverse punch, will probably do you more good than 1,000 different flavours of punches and yurakens and shutos and haitos and all manner of clever tiger palms and kokonuchis and you know, a million different hand shapes that you can't use. Whereas one devastating punch, one fully committed punch, and the stance to deliver it, of course, and the timing would probably serve you far better. So when you're looking at your style, be it GKR, which is what I train in, or whatever your style is, don't be unhappy that your style is not another style, that it doesn't have elements, you know, that it doesn't have elements of chain punching, or it doesn't have elements of high kicking, or it doesn't have elements of locking in. It is true that there are skills that you could supplement your style with. For example, in my style, we don't do an awful lot of grappling beyond what's in the kata. And I think it's unreasonable to assume that every fight would conclude, every self-defense situation would conclude standing up. Nevertheless, if that's what I trained for, if I trained to keep every fight on you know, standing up on my feet, there's more likelihood that I would be able to control a fight in that way. than if I have a tool set of ground fighting and blah 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 blah, and I'm trying to deal with every single situation that might arise. So yeah, guys, be happy with what you've got. Analyse the tool set provided by your style. If you don't think that the tool set provided by your style is diverse enough to cope with self-defense situations, then it's probably time to change styles. But to be honest, there are very few styles that I've ever seen or done where I think that's the case. I think if you know that the tool set may be taught poorly, but the actual tool set is adequate to your needs, and if you achieve mastery in the tool set you're given, then you will be a competent self-defense fighter, and that's really, I guess, what any of us is looking for. You take care.